Hey everybody, Josh Sheridan here with the Barely Legal Podcast.
They demand my alter ego, but I won't go.
On today's show, we have one of my local legal heroes. Joe Hunt is well known, well regarded locally in the legal community at large, as well as the family law community. He's one of the three partners at Harris Hunt and Durr, at least the three named partners. He also has a excellent taste in music, which is primarily why I brought him in, but I'll probably talk about both with him. Thank you so much for coming today.
You're welcome, and I'm glad if we only talk about music today.
Well,
so.
I don't know when it was that I became aware that you were a fan. There was a brief period of time where we worked in the same building. And the Barristers building, and I remember kind of passing you in the parking lot, and I think it may have come up there. But I think I ran into you and Phil Wartenberg at a Wilco concert one time. Does that seem like that could have happened?
It was I think it was the My Morning Jacket Wilco Bob Dylan show. Was that the one?
Well, that was one for sure. But then they also played at the Straz Theater. Bon Iver played there. I could be confusing. These were all around the same time, but I remember. The point that I'm getting to is somehow you and Phil Wartenberg occupy the same, like I kind of figured out at the same time that you guys had decent taste in music and like going to live shows. So,
well, and it was probably on that, the Wilco one, if I was with somebody, probably been Niall Brooks, actually.
That's
Phil.
Also true. And isn't he like a giant Iron Maiden fan or something like that?
Huge Iron Maiden fan.
I got to have him on here.
You need to.
We could just talk Iron Maiden.
Niall plays live out too.
I think somehow I've gotten through my career not intentionally, but avoiding him. I've never had a case with him. I know the name very well, but somehow, and also the same is true for you. I don't think I may have had a case with your firm. I know I've never had a case with you, but you also tend to do a lot of the higher end collaborative, not all collaborative, but that kind of stuff.
Right.
Now, are you from Florida originally?
No, I'm from Michigan originally.
Michigan. All right. Whereabouts in Michigan?
A little town called Mount Morris, just north of Flint, Michigan.
So was it industrial or was it country? Or I heard the word for the first time used the other day, exurbs. Have you ever heard the phrase exurbs before?
Not, no.
As opposed to suburbs, I guess, which I don't know if that's like outer suburbs or whatever. I'll have to look it up, but I thought it was a great word.
Mount Morris was a little bit of a country, but literally it was north of Flint, like 4 or 5 miles, and Flint's very industrial. So it was, but most people there worked, in Flint.
Well, so let me go through my brief knowledge of Michigan. I've got Iggy Pop, I've got MC5, I've got Ted Nugent, I've got the water crisis, I've got the car factories, and I've got Joe Hunt. That's kind of that's pretty much the greatest hits of Michigan.
That's the not greatest hits so much of it.
The ups and downs. So what years were you there?
Well, I was born and raised there, and I left in the late 80s after college. I went to Michigan State.
Okay, so late 80s, you were already out of college?
Mm-hmm.
You've aged very well.
Thank you.
How old are you?
56.
Really? Wow. I hope I'm doing as well as you at 56. I feel like I look like I'm 56 already, and I'm 44.
Believe me, I'm fooling people then, because when I get out of bed in the morning, I feel 56.
You feel every moment of it. So growing up in Michigan, how was that? What did Dad do? What did Mom do?
Well, they just like everybody in Flint. They were either connected to the auto industry or they worked. My dad worked in the auto factory, and my mom worked in the factory also.
When did it tank? What year was that approximately?
Pretty much about the time I graduated from college.
Oh, yeah. So that was kind of the end.
Part of the reason my parents left. I mean, I have 3 siblings. They were all leaving. Everybody. I mean, Flint literally in the 80 census to the 90 census, the population pretty much cut in half. Everybody left.
That's insane.
The unemployment rate in the early 80s was 25 to 30%. But they were in the auto factories.
And so, did they just take jobs in Florida, or what was the move?
No, my dad, he was with GM. Is he
still with us, or
no?
Okay.
Neither of my parents are.
Okay.
My dad was with GM for 30 some years. He retired. He was like 53 years old.
Okay,
but, that's so he was born and raised in Georgia. He moved back to Georgia.
Could you imagine being retired already?
No.
Wow. It's part of me thinks it would be the best thing ever. Then part of me thinks it would spell like my demise. When my dad stopped working, he didn't last much longer after that. If you don't have a reason to get up in the morning, you tend to kind of just sink into the couch, and that's the end of
I
it.
have known that to happen to people. Yeah.
Yeah. So your siblings, older, younger, a little bit of both?
2 older and 1 younger.
Okay. Brothers, sisters?
Older sister, older brother, younger sister.
Okay. And were you guys close?
In age or
Relationship-wise.
Yeah, relationship growing up. I mean, they live in. My younger sister moved back to Flint. She lives up there.
Okay.
And my other 2 live in Georgia.
Okay.
So we don't see each other that often.
Right.
The one thing about we text but we don't see each other very often just because of the distance.
Religious family, not a religious family?
Not a religious family.
Okay. Liberal, conservative?
For my growing up, or
growing up.
It's interesting because Flint was very much, I had Southern parents. My mom was born in Arkansas. My dad was raised in Georgia. But that was back when they were Democrats, true and true, and they were Union people. So they were definitely Democrats.
It was a different look back then from today, for sure.
Very much so.
What did a young Joe Hunt do in high school? Was he an artist? Was he an athlete? Was he a academic or a recluse, or what was?
A little bit of a recluse.
Yeah.
I had a small handful. I mean, when I graduated from high school, I was voted the shyest guy in my senior class.
Really?
Oh yeah. And
now that could mean a couple different things. One is you're having a lot of conversations, just no one's privy to them inside your head. And then, or something else. So were you just getting the angles on the room, or? Well,
my friends said, well, we can't get you to shut up. So what are these people talking about? It's just I had a small circle of friends, and I didn't, I was a little socially awkward about starting new conversations. People didn't know, and also I was very much sit me in a room for 3 hours and read a book, and I was happy. I mean, I guess
that's like my wife, Dina. She's one of 6, but she loved her solitude, loved to be, I'm that way. I'm an only child, so I grew up in that environment just by the fact there was no one else around. So that's, for me, I get energized being away from people. She does too, but she's a part of a bigger family, so she's a little bit different. But yeah, no, for me, it's I find people training.
Well, I think that was part of the issue. I had we lived in, look, my parents were of modest means. We were, I guess, lower socioeconomic, not poor, but we lived in a trailer park for a lot of years.
Oh, really?
We had, you got 3 siblings and just, and pretty small, getting your solitude.
It's expensive,
but also finding your solitude wasn't that easy. So when you got it, you really, I welcomed it and I enjoyed it and I took advantage of it.
Did you listen to music back then? Were you into comic books? Did you play any sports, or?
I played a lot of basketball, not organized so much.
Pick up
a lot. I played in a golf team in high school.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I couldn't golf. I mean, I was 15. A friend of mine said, "Why don't you play on a golf team?" I'd golfed like twice my whole life, and so all right. So I learned how to play golf by being on the golf team.
People always ask me if I play golf or if I play guitar. I'm like, well, I own clubs and I own a guitar, but I don't know. Play's a real strong word.
First of all, I own a guitar and I own clubs, and the guitar sits in the wall and the clubs sit in my garage, and they don't get used much. So.
Well, that's cool. So college, where did you go?
Michigan State.
And is that the only place that you applied? Was that like if you're a state resident, you get to go there free, or?
You didn't get to go free. I don't recall if I applied very many other places. It wasn't the only place I applied, but I don't recall where else I applied. But it was, I was going to have to go in state because it was.
Was that the Spartans?
Expensive. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. And how was that experience?
Loved it.
What years were you in college?
82 to 87.
Okay.
And I, again, loved it. I loved my time there. I bleed green and white. I mean, I'm so
You're a follower to sports and all that other stuff?
Mainly basketball.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it's a beautiful campus, beautiful school. If I get up there, I've taken my kids there to show them the campus because it was such a great place it was a great place to be go to college.
What did you major in?
Finance.
Oh, really? Okay. Did you head for numbers, or what was the thinking there?
Head for numbers. It was kind of an alternative. I actually wanted to be an economics major.
Okay.
I loved economics.
Economics was a big talking point in the 80s, trickle down and otherwise.
Well, and trickle up. That's
yeah.
And so I probably took a total of maybe 6 economics classes in college. Michigan State didn't have minors.
Sure.
But you had to, in order to get a major or a degree in economics, you had to have calculus, and calculus and me didn't agree.
I can't even spell calculus.
We did not agree, so I became a finance major.
Okay, and then straight into law school, or did you work a little bit before you did that?
No, when I came out of high school or college, I didn't really know what I wanted to do, honestly. And then I was in Flint. And it was like, there's nothing here.
Yeah.
So I shortly thereafter, a few months, moved to Tampa.
What brought you to Tampa?
I had visited. I had a friend. My best friend growing up had moved to Tampa.
I mean, it's pretty much the other end of the dial from Michigan.
So my best friend growing up had was in the Army.
Okay.
He left the Army. He came down to Tampa, went to USF. I had visited him, really liked it. And he said, why don't you come move down here? So I did. And then I started actually my MBA at USF.
Oh, really? Okay.
And then when I got into that, I decided this is not really what I want to do. So I was still trying to figure out what I wanted to do. One thing to back up a little bit, being really shy and going to college. I came from a huge family, extended family.
Uh-huh.
I mean, dozens and dozens of cousins.
What are you WASP? What's your?
But I was the first person ever in my extended family ever to go to college. Even.
Okay.
So I didn't even know what a fraternity was when I walked into college.
But are you of English or Scottish or Irish or do you?
I mean, there's some. I've got some American Indian in me, but mostly Scottish and English.
Okay.
Hunt's definitely an English name.
Okay. So anyway, you were talking about you wanted to back up a little bit.
So then I left MBA. Then I was started thinking about law school, and it wasn't to become a lawyer because I had a passion for politics.
Really? Okay.
I did, and then I started applying for law schools, worked some jobs as waiting, those kind of things to try to save some money.
Right.
And then applied to different law schools. The two that I remember applying were Stetson and University of Denver.
Okay.
That I got accepted to. I remember those because that was the two it came down to, and I went to Stetson.
Denver and Gulfport, it's a hard choice.
Yeah, looking well, I don't regret anything.
Well, sure. I mean, you've done well by it, but
and also I wouldn't have met my wife or whatever. There's all sorts of things that wouldn't have happened.
Well, that's the same for me. What was I going to ask you? There was a question I was going to ask you. Oh, any lawyers in the family?
No, like I said, I was the first person in my family ever to go to college.
Okay,
law school.
Okay, so Harry, do you become the settler of all problems internally? Ask Joey what he thinks on this.
I do get sometimes like some people, hey, what do you think of this? And it's always they're in Georgia. I'm like, I don't know.
It's not a law that I practice. It's not an area that I know. I mean,
thankfully, I think I said that enough times. I don't get those questions.
They know by
anymore.
this point just to leave you alone. You mentioned wanting to go into politics. Did you have political heroes at that time or people that kind of inspired you to kind of want to go into that world?
Yeah. Well, probably more literary heroes that kind of steered me.
Are you a big reader?
When I was younger, I was. Yeah,
okay.
I was huge.
Who'd you like?
Steinbeck,
sure.
Aleksandr Solzhenitsyn were two of my favorites when think of my youth.
Solzhenitsyn's heavy for youth. That was your thing.
It was. I'm trying to think of my heroes though politically back then. I mean, gosh, it's really this.
Jimmy Carter?
Jimmy Carter wasn't a hero. I admired him.
Yeah.
He wasn't a hero. Matter of fact, it's interesting. I joined, I think, 79. I was 15. I joined Young Republicans in Flint.
Yeah.
I wasn't a Republican. And matter of fact, you were supposed to be 18 to be in it, but I got invited to be in it because I was politically aware and interested. But I went to like 2 meetings and all they did was talk bad about Democrats. I'm like, this isn't for me. I was just trying to learn the whole political angle of it.
Right.
And then I wish I'd stayed in it only because the Republican National Convention 1980 was in Detroit and it would have happened. And just to learn it, not because I've never been a Republican. And
was that year Reagan versus, because Carter was only one term, right?
Reagan versus Carter in 80.
Yeah, interesting. Well, that would have been a good one to witness.
I was not a Reagan fan, but it would have been neat to go to that.
It's so funny the place he kind of holds in our history because it's he's very much been romanticized, but I think with a little bit of perspective and distance, there's been some holes poked in the facade of how great that period was. I don't know if you remember it at the time or looking at it through history's glasses, but. That's always considered by a lot of people like the heyday of America, the economy, Well,
I think, I kind of look at it from a different perspective too, is we look at it in the lens versus today. And
sure.
I just think, the landscape and the dialogue was very different back then.
Yeah.
I mean, I didn't agree with much of what Reagan did, but it doesn't mean I didn't question his patriotism.
Right.
I mean, and that's what happens now. If you don't agree, it's like, oh, you're not American, you're not patriotic.
You can't have a a civil
It is very
discussion.
difficult. I went to college. Matter of fact, my it's roommates that we would get in these huge. They were really conservative. I was the one liberal, and we would get in these huge arguments, and we always ended them. And so, matter of fact, here's how we ended them. This is kind of funny. You won't remember this, but in '79, the Who concert in Cincinnati, where 11 people died. Because the general admission, and they thought Who was coming on. They heard the music, and it was a stampede. Well, WKRP in Cincinnati did an episode about that, and Gary Sandy he was the actor, his character, say it all comes down to that damn festival seating. So we would always, if our arguments got out of hand, one of us would say, you know what it comes down to? It's that damn festival seating. And we knew it was like, okay,
that was the safe word.
Time to stop this, because we don't want to make it personal. It's just about, okay, we disagree on issues. So
that's funny. So you went with Stetson over Denver. This is what, late 80s? Early 90s?
Early 90s. I started in January of 91.
Okay.
My class.
And did it click right away that this is where you're supposed to be, or did it take a little bit of doing? It still hasn't clicked for me, and I'm about 20 years in.
You know, as I said, I didn't even go to law school and started it intend to be a lawyer.
Yeah.
It didn't click right away. I can't say what caused it to click. It was a place to be. I loved the first year. I loved I loved some of the challenge of reading the kind of things like constitutional law, for example, that kind of stuff I just loved. It was difficult. I mean, it was, yeah,
but everybody, what I've found is it's easier to suffer when everyone's suffering. So in law school, it's easier to study because it's not like someone else is out surfing or someone else is whatever. Like everybody's doing it. That's been the same, at least in the early stages of the pandemic with business. It's like, okay, business sucks for absolutely everybody. So, I mean, I can feel bad about it,
Right.
but it's not like anybody else is getting over on it. So that was my recollection of year one. So where did you gravitate? Were you more in the advocacy sector? Did you do law review? Did you do moot court, any of that stuff?
I didn't do law review. I did. I was on the environmental moot court team.
Okay.
My third year. Which was it was fun. It was actually four of us. I wound up being the alternate on I went in the coach's place because the coach was doing something to change
Right.
jobs. So we went to New York and had a good time. And I was just an alternate. I'm helping them, but
That's the best. You can drink and you don't have to worry about prepping.
So I but I took trial practice, and that's when I started thinking. I think in my third year I did that, and I was like, yeah, I kind of like this.
So what was the first job out of law school?
I worked for a sole practitioner in Temple Terrace, actually, which is now where I live. It was his practice was struggling. I took that job, and I did some other side stuff for other lawyers, mainly writing briefs, things like that.
What type of law was that?
It was everything.
Everything threshold law.
A lot of bankruptcy.
Okay.
Some family law. But you think about it, I think pretty much if it would walk in the door, we could do it.
Right.
A lot of it was like, Chapter 7, 13 bankruptcies.
So how long? Just a couple years there?
Probably not even that.
Oh, pretty quick. It's pretty quick turnaround. Now, where does meeting your wife, getting married fall in this whole timeline?
She and I met in 1997.
Okay.
And we got married. Yeah, our wedding anniversary was yesterday.
That's right. Happy anniversary.
21 years yesterday.
That's big. What's 21 years? Like cardboard, or what's the anniversary?
I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. It's in the year of COVID. Who cares?
Yeah, it's not getting COVID. It's paying your mortgage. Right. Yeah. So you had been out for a little bit by that point, practicing.
Yeah, I was actually working for Mugen Reel, Catherine Reel's firm.
You worked for Catherine Reel too?
I did for 4 years.
Wow. I'm always amazed at who worked for Catherine Reel, and you don't have to comment on any of this, but she's a galvanizing figure locally, and she practices law in a certain way. And anytime I run into like a Courtney Bowes or an Alberto Romero or a Joe Hunt, I'm always surprised that they sharpen their teeth or their short sword coming through that gauntlet. So she still practice?
I don't know.
I had a case with her a little while ago, but it's been a few years.
I did too. I don't know. She sold that building.
She did?
Yeah. I've driven by that a few times. That's why I know that.
Right. Well, yeah. I mean, she's a tough cookie, and so like Courtney Bowes, one of the most low key people you're ever going to run across, and Alberto was a great attorney, and a fierce advocate in the courtroom, but just the consummate gentleman. And I'll kind of get to this discussion with you eventually about the regard that I hold you in and why. But so that's interesting to me. So how many years? You said 4 years there?
4 years.
And then what?
Well, then I left and formed my own practice. What had happened was, now I'd say to Catherine Real, you're a galvanizing figure. The one thing she did, though, is she gave you a lot of responsibility. Maybe sometimes you weren't ready for it.
Right.
But believe me, I learned a lot.
You learned a lot, yeah.
I learned a whole lot. And I worked my tail off, too, because it really required that.
100%. And with her, I mean, very sharp, fear, like, it wasn't going to be an easy case. You're going to be a lot of discovery practice. You're going to be a lot of motions. There's going to be a lot of fee hearings. There's going to be, I mean, you're going to get your money's worth as far as being in the courtroom with her. So 100%, I would imagine you got to see every angle of it while you were there.
So I left her and just had my own practice for a while. It was interesting. I left, it was 99, and Nancy Harris was actually, I'd been a few people had offered me jobs, and I always said, yeah, so Nancy was trying to hire me.
Yeah.
And then finally Nancy said, Joe, if you're not going to come work for me, you should form your own practice.
Right.
And I started thinking about that, and it was scary because my wife wasn't working at the time. I had a 3-month-old baby, and then
jumping off a cliff.
And it was, I did that for a while. The problem is, this, when you're by yourself, there are things you have to stress over. You don't have to stress over with a firm, and it became really. I mean, it just was. I wasn't the right time for me. I shouldn't have done it at the time.
And that's so true. I've spent. I've been out on my own since 2005, and there's been various episodes during that time period where I'm like, God, if I could just not have to do this whole part of it and be an attorney. Anytime I have a case where it's up against a bigger firm and it's an associate or whatever, and they have all these beautiful memos and all this case law and stuff. It's like, yeah, I was trying to figure out why my burglary alarm wouldn't go off last night, and I got a roof leak, and I got to figure out how to make payroll this Friday. So I didn't have all the time to do, these fancy memos and case law. So, I always wonder what it would be like to just be able to practice law, and there's been people like Jeff Koster, who went to Older and Lundy, and, Luke, who went and worked with Ingrid, and all these different people who kind of saw a future working for somebody else and took that chance. So yeah, that's something I think about a lot. But luckily with Nancy, I mean, you couldn't have picked a better person. I'm trying to think of the adjectives I could use for her: a better attorney, a better person, a better business person, just all around, great individual. I mean, she really is one of a kind. Now, did you know her pretty well before that? How was it that she came to offer? Did you have cases together, or?
We had a case together.
Because she doesn't hire people lightly. I mean, people don't join your firm just kind of on a whim. I mean, there's a pretty good vetting process.
So we had a case together, and we got to know each other pretty well through that. I think we got to know each other a little bit through the Inns of Court that pretty much started around that time also. Right. I think the Inns of Court here, the family in started maybe 97, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
And Nancy was one of the founders of that. So, right. And I was one of the early people to join it. So, but it was mainly this case we had together, and we got to spend some time, and she saw how I practiced. And that was with Catherine Real at the time.
Right.
But I literally, when I was with Catherine, I pretty early on just kind of had my own, it's almost like I was partners with Catherine. I've got my own thing going on here.
Right.
And that, that was nice.
Yeah. So when you started with Nancy, was it just the two of you, or?
No, when I started working with Nancy, I started with her in 2004. Christine Durr was there, but not as a lawyer.
That's right.
Yet.
She told me that. Yeah, I forgot about that.
She was not a lawyer yet, and Chris Regano was working there.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Chris left maybe 6 months later.
Now, when I came into the barrister's building, Regano and his partner, Eric, what was the guy's name? Did criminal, big tall guy. You guys were all on the same floor. He was up in the right-hand corner, and you guys were in the center part there, weren't you?
Yeah, I remember the guy. I can't remember his name.
Yeah, anyway. Okay, I didn't know Regano was there. That's interesting. Okay. So you guys didn't work together, or he was on his way out when you came in, or?
No, he was there, but again, it's so long ago, but it's probably about 6 months.
Yeah.
And then he left.
Yeah.
And then I don't remember if he went and joined that other gentleman right away, or if he had his own practice first. I don't recall.
So when you got in with Nancy, was it pretty clear right away that you were happy with the decision that you made?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Because partnerships are a dicey proposition. I mean, they either all the way work or they all the way don't. It's very hard to kind of occupy a middle ground in partnerships. You've got to either be on the complete same page, have a lot of trust for each other, that both it's a marriage. I mean, it really is a marriage, and I've been a part of partnerships before, and luckily I've remained friends with my partners, but very difficult to do because I know at least in a marriage there's love there, so there is kind of a glue there that you don't always necessarily have, at least in that way in a business. So, so 2004, so not quite 20 years yet, but you're getting pretty darn close.
Yeah, and I'll say one thing about Nancy too is she's she's a very classy individual, is the one, but she also she's got very high standards.
Yes,
but she, from the get-go, probably believed in me more than I would ever believe in myself, and even with those high standards. So that's kind of, and I've got that. That's, thankfully I have partners, including my own wife, that's the same thing, that really
well, they make you better, and most people that are, if you knew you were amazing, you wouldn't be Joe Hunt. That's not a paint that you paint with. So that's a compliment.
That's a great way of putting it. Yeah.
So that firm, does it exclusively do family law? That's all I've ever known it to do. Do you guys dabble in anything else, or?
That's all we've ever done is family law.
That's great. And you guys were really kind of first through the door in the whole collaborative movement, or at least that was my perception.
Well, I would say when I joined with Nancy, that was one of the things that I really liked, that being, because that was something on the ground floor, really. And
that was only like 2005, wasn't it?
The practice group that I'm in here, we formed in 2006.
Okay.
So there was a practice group that started in 2000, but it wasn't as formal as this one is.
Right. Now, how many kids do you have?
3.
And what are their ages?
21, 18, and 16.
So 2 in college, 1 in high school?
Correct.
Okay. What colleges?
I've got one up in Tallahassee.
Okay.
My 18-year-old goes up to Point Park, which is in Pittsburgh.
Okay.
And my youngest one's she's a junior at Brooks to Barlow High School.
Okay. Pittsburgh.
Mm-hmm.
What's in Pittsburgh?
She is a theater
kid.
And Point Park has a very good conservatory, so she got into the BFA program up there.
How did you find having kids impact your practice of family law? Did it change you completely, or not much?
Ooh. I don't know. I could say it changed me completely. I mean, I was
an empathetic person who saw nuance and got the import of family beforehand. Well,
I'm very lucky too. My parents, even though they were not educated, my dad had 8th grade education, my mom, high school. Empathy is something they taught all of us. And
emotional intelligence.
My parents divorced when I was 11, and when my father passed away almost 20 years ago now, I'm going through like papers and seeing things that he had, and my mom having to go to court over child support and things like that. We never knew a darn thing about. My parents kept all that from us.
That's
and they wouldn't go around saying things about the other. So, I mean, I learned a lot in that regard of how to not, so how to I can help guide clients guide through the process when they have kids, and try not to get the emotions, they're going to have their own emotions, but don't take advantage of their emotions.
Now, if correct me if I'm wrong, but weren't you recognized by the local Inn of Court for, is it professionalism, or what's the award that I'm thinking of?
It's it's a professionalism award.
So I'm not saying you're as old as these gentlemen, but I have these lists of names that sit out there, and it's Stan Givens, Jim Knox, Ron Reed, Dominic Baccarella, and you. And what is so amazing to me about, and a lot of them, there's a lot of people who probably think they're devils, or probably think that they're, whatever, but they were able to get through a career, and I'm not going to say it's the toughest career, because I mean, you could be fighting in Afghanistan or there's tougher careers, but emotionally speaking, it's very easy to become sour or hardened, or, with your family, with your loved ones, with your friends, with your clients, with opposing counsel, with the court. And you have gotten through 20 some odd years of doing this, and maintained that ability to be gracious and to be empathetic and to be just a good person. And is that something that you struggle with? Is it something that comes naturally? Is that something that you think about?
It's hard to say. Well, those compliments you just gave me come naturally,
Okay,
so
good.
that I don't have to acknowledge them.
Okay. You don't have to acknowledge or accept that they're true, but they are true. But
I don't say I struggle with them. No.
Because I do. I have this schizophrenia in me. Part of me very much wants to be you, and you know, there's two instances with Jim Knox and Dominic Baccarella where they had me by the short and curlies. They could have decimated me, and they took, I wouldn't say pity, but they were gracious. With Dominic, we had this motion that was coming up. My client hadn't done discovery. We were looking at all these attorney's fees and all this other stuff. And I don't know if I got food poisoning or the stomach bug or what, but literally I was gutting it out to make it to that motion and get in there. I had no defense. Dominic knew he had me dead to rights. He said, if you're sick, just let me know you're sick and we'll reset the motion. And I was just like, I almost started crying because I was like, you have no reason to do that for me other than that you're a good, gracious person. And the fact that he did that gave me some modicum of hope. You know, there is a way to do this job and be a good person at it. But then there's other parts of me where it's just like, you know, the frustration, the anger, the exhaustion, all that stuff. And I just, you know, I come home and my family want to ask me a bunch of questions and all this other stuff. And I'm like, can I just have 5 minutes where I'm not solving the world's problems? And, you know, so I feel like I get torn in different directions. And so that's one of the biggest things that impresses me about you.
Oh, well, believe me, I feel the same way oftentimes, especially not so much now when my kids are older, but when they were younger. Yeah. I mean, you come home to deal with the stuff we're dealing with on a day-to-day basis, and you come home and it's like, you know, you might have something that seems really minor that your kid's struggling with or whatever. Like, you know, I can't think of an example right now. You know, but also I think, you know, for me, I'm thankful I've had great mentors in my life. And I don't mean from law.
And let me include Nancy Harris into that. I don't mean to all men, but by any shot, but you know, Nancy is the crown jewel there. So you know, I'm not trying to be chauvinist or anything, but those are just my personal experiences with attorneys.
Well, I've had great mentors in my life, and you know, starting from an early age.
Yeah.
And you know, not just my parents, but others. That you know, but empathy is a huge aspect of it. Walking somebody else's shoes, never knowing what's going on. I always try to remind myself, if somebody's, because believe me, there are times when somebody come back to me and say, "You were a jerk." Okay, you're right. That's you know so. But so what's going on behind the scenes in their life at that moment? Are they fighting with their spouse right now? It's an impact. You know, I don't assume anything.
Yeah.
Because I'm human too, and I make those mistakes. I remember recently I had an instance where a lawyer filed something, and I didn't. They basically accused me of something, and I reached out to him and sent him an email. So I don't think you should have done this, whatever. So that lawyer's correct. He called me up, and then we had a discussion about it. And then I realized, well, I probably should have called him up first before you have a chance. That's what we should have done instead of me sending that email. And so I got caught up in that. And so I think as long as you're learning by that stuff and when you make those mistakes and, you know, and recognize everybody's human, we're all trying to do a job. And that's why when I try to remind clients when they badmouth another lawyer or whatever, you know, they're doing a job.
And what day were you perfect? You know, what day did you stick the landing, you know, and get a 10 from all the judges? You know, that's true. And then that evolution is another thing, is make sure you're growing. You know, these are two things that come up. You know, we've talked about politics a lot, but I've had discussions with people here. I had Dr. Satterley on and this other guy, Steve Gavatorta, who's a consultant for businesses. And we were talking about emotional intelligence, empathy, and all that, but also the ability to evolve. And those are two such huge attributes that I think a politician needs, that I think we're sorely missing right now, and is a big part of the reason we are where we're at, is, you know, trying to understand where everybody is coming from, and also being able to admit that, maybe I held that position, but I was wrong, whether it's, you know, Kamala and the prosecution of marijuana cases, or Joe Biden and schooling districts, or whatever the case may be. You know, admitting that you've learned or admitting that you've grown is not a sign of weakness. It's a sign of strength. But there's somehow been this villainization of, evolution or of growing emotionally or you're becoming aware. And I don't know where that comes from, but it scares me.
It does me too.
Yeah. So lighter fare. So let's talk music a little bit. Wilco. So we did see the Bob Dylan, My Morning Jacket, Bob Ware, Wilco. Who else am I missing? I think that was pretty much it.
That was it.
Now, did you say the whole show?
No, I left it. I had never seen Bob Dylan before, and I stayed for like 3 songs and left.
So that's exactly what I'm getting at.
3 songs I didn't recognize.
Well, not only that, but his hands, I'm not sure if this is true, but his hands looked so arthritic, I don't even think he could pick up a guitar.
I don't know. At one point we were sitting, I was with Niall Brooks and my wife, and he would start playing Tangled Up in Blue, and I can't remember, one of us said it was Tangled Up in Blue, and I said, no, it's not.
Yeah.
I wasn't sure what the song was. And they
that
were
kills
like,
me.
They're ready to go right away. And I said, no, I've never seen it. And then, but like only 3 songs, I was like, okay, I've had enough.
It was, I'm glad I've laid eyes on him in person because he's such a, interesting character for any number of reasons, but it was kind of a letdown for me. The rest of the show was pretty great. I thought Bob Weir, popping in on everybody's music was pretty good. Were you a Deadhead?
No. I saw him once though.
So tell me about shows. What shows pop out in because you go to quite a few. Like who are some of your favorites? What were some of your most memorable?
Springsteen.
Where? Oh wait, I remember this. Did you go to the Broadway thing?
Oh yeah. I've seen Springsteen like 14 times, maybe. I think.
Oh my God, that hurts my soul.
I'll tell you,
seen him once.
My best Springsteen. Well, my 2 best. I got to tell you real quick. My 2 best Springsteen concert memories. The second best, I saw him in 2003 on the Rising tour.
Okay.
It was the first show they did in
Right
February.
after 9/11, yeah, that was the 9/11 album, right?
They did shows in the fall. Then this was the first show in February. It was in Gwinnett County Civic Center in Atlanta. And it just opened. And so I went up there and went with my brother-in-law who was living in Atlanta at the time, my wife's brother. And the Grammys were like 2 or 3 days earlier.
Right.
And Iraq War was just about to start. And we didn't know for sure it was going to start. And so Springsteen walks out on stage and he says, I would like to thank absolutely fucking nobody. And he went into No Surrender. And it was like, you couldn't start a concert better than that. I think he didn't get the best album on the Grammys.
Yeah.
And then the other was in 2008, I saw 3 shows in 4 nights.
Oh my God.
And the reason it wasn't originally supposed to be that way, but Denny Federici died on the Thursday before the Saturday show, which was going to be in Orlando. And then Tampa was Monday and Atlanta on Friday. Had tickets to all 3 shows. And then they had to shuffle it. So they wound up doing Tampa on Tuesday, Orlando Wednesday, and Atlanta on Friday.
Right.
So on the Atlanta show that Friday,
that's about 12 hours of concerts because
matter of fact, in between the Orlando and the Tampa show, they played 48 different songs. I mean, it tells you what one show to the next how it's not the same show.
Yeah.
So but we really had figured this out how to get.
Had Clarence died yet or
no?
Okay.
So we had really figured out how to get. We played general admission. We were trying to figure out how to get up front. So we got up front for the Atlanta show, like on Clarence's side of the stage, like 2 deep. And you're waiting a long time. You could know people around. And we took. That's when we started taking sign requests.
Yeah.
So we took a poster board in there, and it was my wife and I and her brother and his brother's now wife, but girlfriend at the time. And we took a Sharpie, and we had other people help us. And we wrote Bobby Jean on it. And at some point, and I'm holding it up, but I'm like tall. I'm really conscious, but I'm not block people. Yeah. And all of a sudden, you see Springsteen say, come to our side of the stage, where's Bobby Jean? He's looking for the signs. My wife hands him the sign. You put it up, and this is the Phillips Arena, Atlanta, and plays Bobby Jean.
My God.
And everybody around us is going nuts.
That's huge.
And it was such a cool song, too, to play at that moment after Danny had died.
It was such a weird thing for me with Springsteen because my age, my first knowledge of him was Born in the USA, which is it's not really a good entry point for him. It was in the midst of Michael Jackson, Madonna, MTV, pop music, and all this other stuff. And so for many years, I saw him as a kind of a commercial pop act, and it wasn't until much later that I heard Nebraska and the River and Darkness on the Edge of Town and all these other things and realized that he was Mark Twain with a guitar in his hand or something to that effect. So he's one that, and he's still healthy, but it's it's going to get harder and harder to see him. At some point, I have to imagine he's going to hang it up.
Well, he just turned 71.
Yeah.
But yeah, he's in great shape.
He's in amazing shape. Yeah. I mean, even Van Halen caught me off guard. He wasn't in the same shape. I think he smoked like a chimney, but and probably drank a good deal too. But anyway, so what else besides Springsteen?
My Morning Jacket's another one.
Okay.
You know,
you kind of introduced me to Jason Isbell. You and Chris Givens kind of got me into that and the drive-by truckers and all that kind of world. So thank you for that as well.
I'm a huge Truckers fan.
Yeah. I was talking, do you know Have Gun Will Travel, local band?
I've seen them.
Okay.
Yeah.
So Scott Anderson, who plays guitar for them, was in here the other day, and we had a conversation about Southern rock, Americana, Muscle Shoals, all that kind of stuff. And that definitely seems to be kind of an area that you gravitate towards with your musical sensibilities.
It's really, I mean, my music taste have kind of evolved throughout the years,
Sure.
but probably in the last 10 years, that's probably my, if I had to pick a genre of music.
Yeah.
Where
You got a John Prine shirt on today. Have you ever seen him live?
I never saw John Prine live.
Oh,
No.
it always blows my mind that he lived in Gulfport.
Yeah.
Like at any point we could have like run into him at Stetson, just, shopping at the Walgreens on the corner there.
Yeah, my wife saw him a few years ago with her father. They went to see John Prine because he's a big John Prine fan too. I
don't know if she probably wasn't there when you were there, but Sally Waters was a research and writing.
Oh, yeah, she was
Do you
there.
remember her?
Oh, yeah.
She introduced me to John Prine. She did it. She played me Jesus, the Missing Years. And right away I was like, oh, this is badass. I love this. And I started listening to John Prine studying in law school because of Sally Waters. So that's my John Prine story. But even then, I don't think I realized, maybe he wasn't living there yet, but I didn't realize he was there when I was there anyway.
Yeah, it was never really on my radar. I never went over to try to search out John Prine. I don't think he was there when I was there.
There is an article somewhat recently Bill Murray wrote, is like how John Prine pulled him out of his depression, and basically he just put John Prine on 24/7, and somehow he attributes that to pulling him out of his depression. So I thought that was a good story.
I'll have to look for that one. I remember seeing that, but I haven't read that article.
Yeah. So are you going to ride this family law train till the wheels come off, or do you have future plans of, your partner spends half the time in France. Do you have dreams of a boat or a trailer or a RV or jumping a train or something?
It's funny. Probably about 10 years ago, and Nancy doesn't spend half her time in France, but probably about 10 years ago, when somebody asking me, Joe, why don't you have a house in France? And I'm like, well, I've got 3 kids. I mean, so let's get them out of college, then I'll talk about a house in France. Right. I'm probably going to ride it till the wheels come off.
Yeah.
As you put it. Now, what
that looks
means,
like,
I don't know.
Did you ever think about judge or no?
No.
Yeah.
No.
Too big a pay cut.
It's interesting. Because I told you when I went to law school, I was really good in politics.
Yeah.
And even after law school, I almost dipped my toe and at one point running for office. I have no interest in running for office now.
Why would you do it? Like I don't want to say the honor's gone, but kind of the ideology behind it, the feeling that you can make a change, the fact that it's kind of making the world a better place. I'm not saying that that's not true, but it seems so Spartan and far apart. It just, it's kind of disgusting.
And even, it's not so much, I don't think, when you're running for judge, because you're limited to what you can say. You can't
judge, no, it's apolitical.
But even then, I'm just saying, go out there and raising money and all that. It's not, I don't really.
Well,
I just don't have any interest in it anymore. And that's it. So, and I'm not, with the current political landscape, believe me, I wouldn't get appointed to a judgeship. I mean, that just wouldn't happen.
Well, that's interesting and true too. So anyway, well, I can't thank you enough for taking time. I know you're busy. We've been trying to get you in here for a little bit and you kept having trials, but luckily I caught you on a Friday that you had a little bit of free time.
I have a question for you.
Oh, please.
So let me ask you, when you had a trial, do you have a go-to song that you're going to get you pumped up?
I do. I've got a couple, and it really depends on, if I'm angry, it's metal. And if I'm like really out for blood and writing a legal memorandum, there's a song "I'm Broken" by Pantera. That one gets me going. I listen to a lot of Stevie Wonder and Bob Dylan when I'm prepping trial notebooks. And then Bruce Springsteen is one that if you listen closely on virtual hearings, you might hear him playing just very low in the background over my Spotify. I don't know that there's a specific song, more just artists. How about you?
More just artists. If I had to pick up, I mean, Springsteen's always there. You know, if I always look something to pump me up, then there's a few Springsteen examples I can find. But probably the one song that I always come back to my head is The Replacement's Unsatisfied.
Okay.
I don't know, that's just one of my favorites of all time. And it just
I can feel that. One that popped into my head is it when the man comes to town, Johnny Cash. You know, he's got that kind of running bass line gallop thing to it. It feels like shit's about to go down. That's a good one for me. So yeah, but it's funny because music is very much. I walked you right past my office. I did show you, but I have like 6 or 7 guitars in there, and so oftentimes I'm strumming while I'm on these phone calls or in these hearings or whatever. And it, you know, there's something to fertilizing that other part of your brain that you're not using as much in this work that we do.
Right.
And I think, you know, Damian McKinney did that piece there on the wall, that art piece on the wall, and he's got a studio now. He does that. And, you know, a lot of our colleagues have the different things that they're into, but I feel that art and music is what makes life worth fighting for, what makes life worth living. And right now I think we're in a place where it's not held in a high regard, but I'm kind of hoping through politically what's happening, through COVID, through BLM, through all these different things, that I'm hoping we have some great music that comes out of it. You know, I'm hoping this turns into that some way.
I think, I think that's inevitable.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of great art, period, that will come out of this, and probably still is coming out of it.
Right.
We just don't know about yet. I can picture a lot of musicians writing some great songs right now. They just haven't had to get their bands together to record.
Well, that's
them.
right. Yeah, you can't even record.
But you know, it's interesting how that side of my brain doesn't work that well. But my wife's an artist, so I've got that.
Oh, is she?
Oh yeah. So
what does she do?
Mixed media.
Okay.
But she's got a studio in our house, and we've got a lot of her stuff up in my house. So it's interesting. I've got that.
Does she sell it?
She does.
Where can I find it? I got to have her on.
You should have her on.
I would love to have her on.
You
that would be great. So in my youth, that was kind of where I was at. I was really into art. I wanted to go to art school, and I ended up not doing it. But my cousins who stayed on that path, they've just done crazy. Like one of them is in charge of all the marketing for like Denny's and Chipotle, and he does like all their animation and all this other stuff. And then, have you ever heard of it's like a German industrial band, KMFDM?
Yes.
They like reissued all of their vinyl and all of their discs. And I don't know if you've ever seen their art, but it's this very propaganda looking like ink press type art. He did all the covers and inlays for those albums. And so I'm very much drawn to that. Well, that's cool. So is that something she does professionally, or is that something she does on the side?
She does it professionally.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, very cool. I didn't know that.
Yeah, so I've
got a Navalundi piece right here to my left, which, you know, this was during the run on toilet paper. Yeah, Matt's wife did that for me, and I got Damien over there. So I would love to have one of your wife's speeches. My buddy Dave Decker, who shoots photography for Creative Loafing, we flew him to Portland for the protests, and he had to buy that gas mask on the street to go and shoot the photo, so he brought that back for me. So I love to have little mementos from the guests in here.
It's an interesting household I live in with that, you know, because my middle daughter is in theater, and she's actually a very talented artist. So like she got in one of the schools she applied to, got in with SCAD. Been in Savannah College of Art and Design, but she gravitated towards theater. My wife was like, her skills, she's like, I wish she'd go. We both kind of like wish she'd take advantage of it because her skills are really incredible. I bet she gets that from my wife, not from me.
Well, that's amazing. Yeah. I mean, my kids are still too young to figure out, you know, I fantasize about who or what they're going to be. I mean, I'm having a blast with them at this age, but my daughter very much needs to be the center of attention. And my son is probably a lot like you. Like, he seems like an old soul. Like he's kind of just measuring up the room constantly and waiting to comment on, you know, I'm going to reserve comment on what's going on in here. Well, anyway, thank you so much for coming by. I really appreciate it. I just want to thank you in person too. You are definitely a role model, definitely a hero. It's amazing what you've been able to accomplish, and kind of keeping some modicum of civility in what can become a pretty pretty rough area of the law. So thank you.
Well, thank you.
All
Thanks
right.
for those kind words, and thanks for having me on.
All right. Thanks.